welcome to the show, and thank you for listening or watching. Today I've got Tim and David from the band Junkyard. And Junkyard is another one of those bands that came out of the late 80s that's underrated, in my opinion. They did have some minor success on MTV and radio, but I think more people should know who this band is, and hence why I'm having them on the show. They have some interesting connections with rock and punk bands, including Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, Mother Love Bone, the Black Crowes, Bad Religion, and just like any rock band, there are highs and lows, and you'll hear all about that in this episode. Welcome, David and Tim from Junkyard, to the Chuck Shoot Podcast. So what I'd like to do is just tell the story, basically, of Junkyard. For people who have no idea who Junkyard is, but also for diehard fans, hopefully they're going to learn something as well. Does that sound good to you guys?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Yeah, so tell me the story. I know, David, you're from Austin, but how did everyone meet initially and form the band?
Well, I had a garage rock band in Austin in '86, and me and the drummer had decided to move to LA, and then the guitar player decided he wanted to go. So the three of us went out there and at the end of '86 and started looking around, trying to get our, sea legs. And we ran into Chris Gates, who I had known from Austin. He had been there about a year previous, trying to get a band together. So we had that connection. And about 2 weeks after we landed in LA, we hooked up with Chris and kind of informally started the band.
How did you get Brian Baker in? Because who would later go on to be in Bad Religion, but he was in a band called Minor Threat, who people who aren't familiar with the punk scene, I mean, that was like kind of a big punk band back in the day, right? So he kind of had a little bit of a household name, or some recognition.
Yeah, they were kind of a big deal. Chris Gates had a relationship with Brian Baker from the punk scene. It was a very communal type deal back then. So when Big Boys, that was Chris's band, they were on tour, they would, in DC, they'd hook up with Minor Threat. Then when Minor Threat would come through Texas, they would hook up with the Big Boys. And so they had that background. And by the time we got signed, we knew we needed to replace a guitar player, somebody with more chops. And by happenstance, Chris ran into Brian Baker, like literally the day we were deciding to start looking for someone. Met him at a 7-Eleven and said, "Hey, we need a guitar player. You want to check it out?" And he said yes, and that's how it all came together.
Yeah, well, you get a record deal. It's everybody wants to be in your band. But so before you guys got signed, you were actually started out as a cover band, and you got this reputation at the Sunday night sound check or whatever, the open mics, as being kind of a crazy, wild party band. What kind of songs covers were you doing? Was it the classic rock stuff like AC/DC, or was it more the punk, or a mix?
Well, I would say it was a cover band only in the sense that we just started, we'd only met a few weeks earlier. So, the sound check was a cool little dive bar that had a Sunday night open mic thing, and lots of cool people ended up there jamming. But, we hadn't really rehearsed as a band or started writing new material or anything. So we just did covers. I think we did Mississippi Queen and probably some AC/DC and ZZ Top, just something we could all latch onto easily.
Sure. And then, so is this true? You guys opened for Jane's Addiction and Green River, which Green River would later basically turn into Pearl Jam, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, there was a place in LA at the time, off of the Sunset Strip, off of that whole scene. It was a place called Scream, and it was a huge building, and they had 2 or 3 stages, or two or three different levels. It was a huge place. It was at an old hotel or something, I believe. But the woman who booked it, Dale Gloria, who was our first manager, she booked lots of different bands, so she would mix it up. There was like goth and cowpunk and rock and roll, and everything went. It wasn't too denominational. It was not just one genre of music. It was 2 or 3 kind of things happening. It was a scene. And Jane's Addiction We played with them. Green River played there. All, Guns N' Roses played at the Scream. Lots of great bands.
Yeah, and you guys, what's that?
No, go ahead.
You guys, speaking of Guns N' Roses, you guys also, you opened for Guns N' Roses, and I love this. So you used to give away shirts, which is really smart, especially back in the day before internet, to get your name out there. You gave the shirt away, so then people are basically advertising for you. And Axl Rose got one, and there's a picture of him wearing a Junkyard T-shirt, and I think I saw one of Slash wearing one as well.
Yeah, we've got quite a handful of prominent people who've worn the shirt. Yeah, it's that particular incident with Axl. We actually happened to. Chris had some silk screening background, so he shot a screen, and we made T-shirts at home, and we had a gig that night, the night that we pressed a bunch of shirts, and we took them down there for promotion, to give them away.
Mm-hmm.
And Axl was there, and Duff, and I think Slash was there. I can't believe it, but 2 or 3 of the guys were there, and we did a Nice Boys cover of Nice Boys, the Roes Tattoo song, and Axl came up and sang with us, and we gave him a shirt that night, and I think he had a photo shirt the next day, and I don't think he changed that shirt for 2 or 3 days. And, I think we did like a couple of prime photo shoots and a live show.
Were they?
And, you can't buy that kind of.
That's amazing. Yeah. So were they as big of a band back then before they, obviously got on MTV and the record label, like even just locally? I heard you say, I think Faster Pussycat was maybe the bigger band at the time before, both of those bands got record deals.
I don't know.
Guns N' Roses, when I hit the ground here in '86, they were by far, they ruled it. They were the most talked about band. They had myth already, and they hadn't even have a record out yet. They were mythological almost. Like they were the shit in Hollywood.
It took a little longer for America to catch up, or the rest of the world.
Right.
I think what you're saying is initially with Pussycat album and Guns N' Roses album almost came out within weeks of each other. And initially, Pussycat came out of the gates a little faster.
Okay.
It seemed like us. Like they got more national exposure. It seemed like, it's Pussycat, because Guns N' Roses were maybe seen, we thought like that might just be too dark for America. Pussycat had a much more straight head rock and roll thing. Like maybe that's
Pussycat led themselves more to the Poison.
Yeah, a little poppier.
They were on paper better looking, I guess. Top brother and shit.
So Tim,
but Guns N' Roses was the biggest thing.
Okay.
On the scene.
Yeah, because that's what I thought. Because I heard even Tracy Guns tell the story about. I don't know if people know the story how it was L.A. Guns with Tracy Guns and then Axl Rose, Hollywood Rose, and they merged the two bands, came up with Guns N' Roses. And I heard Tracy telling the story about how he was in Guns N' Roses. And then it got like to a point where I think they were living with Axl, and then it got to a point where he wasn't really even talking to Axl anymore. And that's when he kind of realized like, he's like he's getting too big. Like it's just, he's getting too much attention even before they really took off. Like locally, I think they were the thing. So that just confirms what I've heard
Their stories. I mean, I didn't know them well. David knew them a lot better. But you'd hear stories about individual guys in that band getting up to whatever behavior they were doing and all these things. They were legendary. Like, you did not want to leave your girlfriend in a room, because all the chicks loved them.
Of course.
Girlfriends.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just voracious. And
so,
they would, and if they came somewhere, they'd cut a swath through the room with, it was all real. Appetite for Destruction. That's a really apt title. They had a reputation that I've never seen the band have before. For
sure. Did you guys watch the Axl Rose Reels biography channel thing?
I haven't.
My God, it's so good. I'll have to send that to you. But so Tim,
send me the link. I'll watch that.
Explain to me. I know you didn't join the band until 2000, but were you in the scene back then, or were you friends with the band, or what was?
Yeah, I think David and Chris were some of the first people. I landed in Hollywood in fall of '86 with a bunch of guys from DC.
Okay.
And I think we all kind of lived in the same shitty East Hollywood area within blocks of each other. And so people who are transplants tend to find each other. And somehow we came across Chris Gates, probably being from DC, because that kind of gives you some kind of cachet because of the punk thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting to know Chris and David really early. And then I was in a band, and they were very quick to give us opening slots. And so the band that I was in, called Broken Glass, that formed pretty soon after that, came up under Junkyard, and they would give us shows. And Brian Baker was a DC guy, and we were running together when he joined Junkyard too.
Okay.
So we were tight then. And so there was always that connection as well. You know, various members, we all worked on.
Tim was in the thread very early on.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we were all in each other's pockets.
That's cool.
Really starting from the late 80s, like either living with each other or spending many evenings hanging out, playing on the same shows, sharing road crew. I mean, fill in the blank.
Okay. So walk me through this time in the late 80s, the Hollywood Sunset Strip. I'm just so fascinated by this time. Like, I've seen the movie The Dirt, obviously, and I've read about it, I've heard it in so many interviews, but I just thought I want to hear your take on what was it like for you guys back in those days. I mean, you mentioned a little bit Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussycat. Who else were you hanging out with? What other memories do you have? Like, paint a picture for me, because I love hearing these kind of stories.
Well, I think you agree with David would agree that we didn't do the Strip. It was like a whole different world. We were in our little bubble in East Hollywood, and we played these divey places in East Hollywood, and it was a much more eclectic scene. You know, if you played the Strip, you had to be one kind of thing, and we were all kind of doing different stuff. Believe it or not, there was not a lot of hegemony, and like, you know, they were different bands. Jane's Addiction is very different from Junkyard, which is very different from this, and on down the line. And so the East Hollywood clubs were open to that. So you could play on a bill with X and then have LA Guns open from. That stuff happened a lot back then. And I liked that. I didn't want to have to, I didn't get into this business to fucking fit in with somebody on the Strip trying to sell pre-sale tickets.
Right.
But I do say, you know, East Hollywood and the clubs like the Scream, these underground clubs that were not really even advertised, it was all a very word of mouth. It was a huge scene. It was the legitimate scene. We're selling out venues as unsigned acts on a Saturday night. My band Broken Glass, we would sell out a venue on a Saturday night at a $20 ticket once we got popular. So it was
the same scene that we came out of in East Hollywood spawned the bands like Green River and Thelonious Monster and Jane's Addiction. It was like Tim said, it was eclectic. It was, but there were a lot of very relevant bands in that scene. Guns N' Roses was very much a part of it.
Yeah,
they were very much a part of
the
the
Hollywood band. And it was, you know, there's lots of craziness, and you know, it was Hollywood at the time was really free, meaning like it was sort of dangerous. And
Disneyland for adults.
Yeah.
All right. That's a good description.
In reverse. Like the cops never seemed to bother you. They were more interested in gangs in South Central.
Okay.
And we would drive around in beater cars with our crazy clothes on, going to these shitty clubs. And they didn't seem to really bother with us very much. Rent was very cheap.
That's crazy, because now it's probably through the roof in LA, anywhere.
You can't have a good music scene with expensive rent, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
You never hear about New York anymore because it's too expensive to live there, and Hollywood's probably in that same place now.
That's a good point.
It was very, very cheap, and it was unleaded gas that cost 65 cents a gallon. So you could, you know, rehearsals were $6 to $8 an hour for a rehearsal room. Like it was.
He's embellishing a little bit.
Yeah, no, it sounds cool to be like surrounded by like-minded people and all musicians. And it sounds like from the stories I've heard, everyone was pretty cool with each other. Like everyone was kind of friends, right? I mean, was there any rivalries, like where certain bands didn't like each other or anything like that?
That was strip stuff.
Yeah, it had to be.
That was strip stuff.
Strip stuff. Okay.
I mean, you found your core guys. Like, I think, you know, I opened for Junkyard a lot. Junkyard probably found guys that they liked as friends, you know, because you end up sharing gear and all that other kind of stuff. So you end up, bands that are like-minded start cohabitating on buildings and in apartments, you know. So you start to build your own, you know. Junkyard was probably the biggest, that batch that was that post Guns N' Roses, faster LA Guns. They were kind of the first ones out of the gate, with Jane's a little bit behind them. And then, you know, Junkyard got signed. They were one of probably the first. I mean, I don't think the Guns N' Roses record had come out when Junkyard got signed, or it was very close to that.
Okay.
And, So it wasn't like it was a scene that had been proven. I mean, no one
Yeah.
was really convincing Jane's Addiction was going to be popular. I thought they were I thought all of it was too weird. I thought it was a miracle all these bands were getting record deals.
They're so talented though. There's so much talent. So yeah, back to Junkyard. So that first album produced by Tom Werman, who produced all the Motley Crue albums. And I don't know if you guys read this review in All Music. It says, incorporates elements of Southern rock, boogie woogie, and AC/DC-ism into a compact sound. Pretty cool. And then, the singles Hollywood and Simple Man. I mean, some great songs. And I just, I listened to that record still 30 years later, and it still sounds good to me. Do you guys agree? Is there anyone that doesn't like that record?
I hear that people still listen to it 30 years after the fact, and that says a lot. I mean, it says that we didn't pigeonhole ourselves. We didn't write for that era. We just wrote songs. So hopefully it had some longevity.
No, I think
we play most of that album live, but we still, a large part, and it works. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's good. It just works. The songs are good. The writing was solid.
Absolutely.
That's really the key. The good song, really good songwriting,
Yep.
And it's held up. I mean, we're still playing it all the time.
Yeah, I think so. And then you guys, so at this time you did some shows with Dangerous Toys, and then but the crazy one to me is the tour with Black Crowes, and they opened for you guys. Did you guys think that they were gonna, when you're listening to these songs, I think that record, maybe it had just come out or hadn't come out yet. Did you think that was gonna blow up as big as it did?
I wasn't sure. I before the tour started, I got the album and I listened to it and I said, wow, these guys are cool. They had something, they were a breed apart from what was going on at the time, really. And about halfway through the tour, we started seeing them really getting an audience. So the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, no, that's
going to do big things.
Absolutely. And yeah, no, it's great. And you guys had a couple music videos, and then that second album, 6s, 7s, and 9s. So you had that single "All the Time in the World." I think that's your highest charting song, for whatever that's worth. It's the most popular song that way. Do you think that's your best song that you guys have ever made?
No, I don't. I think it's a good song. I think the video was kind of the turning point with our relationship with Geffen, where they kind of tried to pretty us up and,
right.
Whatever, making us more palatable for the mainstream rock audience. And, we play the song today and I like it better now than I did then. But I think my feeling was that it was the beginning of starting to succumb to the Geffen's pressure of being a little more polished and cleaned up.
So is that what they wanted you to do? So, cause it seemed like it was kind of a flooded market at the time for rock bands. I mean, cause for right now, I feel like I host this podcast and I feel like every day there's a new podcast. I mean, I think this is your guys' third interview you've done this week. And so people just don't have enough time to listen to all these podcasts. I'm assuming it was the same back in the day with rock bands. People could have some favorites, but I mean, they can't even keep up with all the bands that were coming out. Was there ever a strategy to maybe try to stand out or to change your look to be different? Or did you guys ever talk about that or changing the sound?
I think we always felt like we were different. We didn't look like everybody else. We didn't sound like everybody else. I think that was just a natural occurrence. We didn't seek out to separate ourselves. I think we just were naturally.
So you didn't want to go more punk though? Cause that's what's interesting too, is that you guys have all those punk influences, or at least some, right?
Well, I think that the album that we were trying to do for Geffen, the third time around, we were starting to implement some of our punk roots to an extent, still keeping it. I mean, it's all Junkyard to me.
Yeah.
Whether it sounds Southern or like AC/DC or, punk rock, whatever, it's just Junkyard.
Mm-hmm.
It always has been. It always will be.
Yeah. So that album, is that the one that's called Old Habits Die Hard?
Yes.
Old Habits.
Is that okay? So I listened to that on Spotify. Is that demos or is that the finished product? Because it sounded pretty good to me. I don't know, but I thought I read something about you guys were unhappy with the. What's that?
it was a great team
Yeah.
that produced those demos.
Back then, I mean, those are on paper demos, but they were 24-track, 2-inch at a big fancy Hollywood studio demos. That's
Okay.
how budgets were back then. They would never, obviously, do it in your living room now.
Yeah.
But so that's where I kind of came in. So I have a little more insight. I was brought in. I don't know, brought in. We were writing together for that record. So I kind of started writing with the band then. And that was probably the beginning of my most formal involvement with the band, which was, 92?
Yep.
I forget, because my band, I'd been signed and dropped and was at, so there's songs on there that David and I would, because we hung out all the time. We would, eventually guitars would come out and we'd sit around and try and come up with songs, or we'd toss stuff around. So I was there for that. And the demos were done at nice studios with big fans. That's why it sounds so good. People wouldn't spend that much money on a record now. They're just, So Old Habits Die Hard is us taking all the demos that had been bootlegged and sold in various, that had kind of gotten out there and people have been asking for. And we never felt it was too diffuse and all over the place. So we finally said, let's put a bow on it and create a version that we all feel is good. I felt like I could have a stake in it too, because I helped write it. And let's pick the best 11 songs out of the whatever there were 20 plus, and make a freestanding record of all that stuff. So we can kind of put it in its place. Like, here's what that third record was, probably going to be about.
Okay.
So it does sound good because it was recorded.
Yeah. Did you have to buy it?
This was years before Tim was actually a member of the band.
Sure.
But that's how far back his
involvement. Yeah.
Kind of goes.
Did you guys have to buy it back from Geffen, or was it?
No, they
let you have it.
It was never official release. So
okay. Oh, yeah, because it's demos. You're right. Good call. Right. So then the band's dropped by Geffen, and you guys break up. So what did everybody do? I know Brian Baker, he joined Bad Religion, which is really cool. What did everyone else do? I think did Patrick have another band, or?
Me and Pat after a couple of years, me and Pat got in a band called Sucker Punch, and we got signed to MCA, Universal, whatever it was, and did that for a couple of years and put out an album for them. He played in a few other bands, and then we all kind of, David had another band. Everyone kind of
had a band called Garage Show with Joe Dog from Dogs D'Amour and Bam, their drummer.
Okay. So then
great band, but at the wrong time.
Sure. So then there's a hiatus, and then I think is it 99 when you guys, was this the first show back you opened for the Supersuckers at the House of Blues?
Yeah.
Like, how did that reformation happen?
Phone call?
Yeah, I think someone called and said, Eddie Spaghetti hears that Junkyard is back together. Is that true? I think we're like, no. And at this point, we had never heard that, but didn't kind of put and he says, well, they want to open for us at the House of Blues. And by this point, Brian was in Bad Religion full time. And so that's when I came in to play Brian's parts, in essence. And so that was the first show.
Okay.
back.
So Eddie Spaghetti from Supersuckers was a fan of Junkyard.
Yes.
Oh, that's really cool. And then you guys did a tour of Japan, and then like a couple years later, you ended up opening for Twisted Sister. And so then you're kind of back, like at that point. I mean, you're doing shows, maybe not full time, but.
Yeah, we're kind of a summer vacation kind of thing, like a trip to Spain, and then a couple, maybe some local shows, when, we did a couple Spanish tours, and there was a Japanese
subsequent
tour.
After it was a 2-day festival in Jerez, Spain. That's the show that we opened for Twisted Sister, but it sort of kind of reintroduced us.
Yeah. And then because you guys did, and then you've done some of the festivals. Did you ever do one of the cruises? That always looks so fun to do one of those things.
We did do the cruise. We have done a cruise. We did it, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to do one of those.
We've done a few of those kind of like 8, we've done M3, and we do odds and ends of that stuff too. As usual, we're kind of sometimes we stick out a bit at those things, which is also nice too, because I think we find that we get fans out of those things because we're a bit of a palate cleanser, as it were. We're different, and I think people like that. So
yeah,
we're always kind of like reticent to be lumped in with any big genre. It is what it is, but we do seem to find new people who've maybe heard of us and had never seen us back, and haven't seen the original band back in the day, and we tour sporadically enough that it's hard to get to see us, that we do get exposed to people who maybe were fans of the song Hollywood back in '89 and have now circled back because our demographic is at the point where they're able to they have disposable income because their kids are grown up, that kind of a thing.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Done a bunch of that
And
stuff.
I think we're confident enough with our material where we are that we can hang with all those bands.
Yeah, no, and do you think it's good in a way that, I know bands don't like Spotify and YouTube and all that, but in a way it's good because people can go back and discover you. Whereas before, like, I mean, you kind of had to make a choice, and you're kind of, a lot of times you're buying an album kind of on blind faith. Maybe you heard one song and you're like, well, I hope I like this right now. And everyone can listen. And if they don't like it, they move on. But if they like it, they're going to keep listening, and then they're going to come see you live.
I always, however they find us, I'm thrilled with. I have no idea how people find us.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
Like
kind of Luddites, and like we do have obviously a presence in all those formats. But
yeah,
David and I, when we get together, like we're writing an album and we put it out on a piece of plastic because that's the format that we kind of understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I found you guys on, it was like a compilation, Youth Gone Wild, hair metal or something. And I think it had the song, I want to say it was Hollywood. And I was like, oh, that's a good song. And then, but I don't even think I could buy your other albums back in, this was like 99 or something. I don't think the other albums were out for sale. And so but then when I think I also heard a couple songs on Sirius. They got the Hair Nation. I think they played a couple of your radio hits, and I was like, oh, these are great songs. And now that Spotify's out, like for me, it's easy because I can just go, I can listen to the whole album, and I love it.
It is great. I mean, I'm a Pandora guy, and I'll listen to Junkyard Radio and hear interesting things that I'm like, oh, I haven't heard that one in a long time. So yeah, you can get the full breadth of the band's career very quickly.
Absolutely.
From the latest stuff to the very first stuff, even obscure stuff, because they pull from every label source that they can get, so it's not like you have to just go through the Geffen or go through Astate. You can hear the whole kit and caboodle if you're so interested. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, the band's had ups and downs. David, I wouldn't normally bring this up, but I did hear you talk about it in other interviews. Is it true that you spent time in a homeless shelter or like Salvation Army at some point for a few months in like 2012?
Yeah, I did.
What happened?
What happened? That was a long time ago. I went into rehab, and the place I was living, didn't want me back, so I needed a place to stay, and the Salvation Army was there, and yeah, I lived there for 3 months.
Wow.
That was real.
So, I mean, it seems like I don't know, in my lifetime, I'm sure you guys have seen it too, just the issues with the homeless. I mean, it seems like it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And I like to hear about, stuff like this. I want to get somebody's opinion who's actually been there. So you were in a bad place. You went to Salvation Army, which was able to help you out. But what do you think, what did help? Was it going to Salvation Army the thing that like helped you get back on your feet, or what helped you get back? Because obviously you're not homeless now. So what helped you get out of that? And how do we help these people?
I mean, it was definitely, I drop a quarter in that red can outside of the Albertsons every time Christmas rolls around. I needed someplace, and they were there, and I thanked them for that. I got out. Brian Baker actually gave me some money to get back on my feet and get out of there and, rent a room somewhere. But things aren't that much easier. I mean, I'm living in a garage right now, just because you got to do what you got to do in these times. Life takes you different places, and you just got to deal with it, whatever it is.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, you're still trying to get back on top?
Well, I mean, what's on top? I don't know. I'm trying to, keep a roof over my head and keep food on the table like everybody else.
Okay. Yeah.
On top. I mean, I don't know what that means anymore. I mean, I'd love to be on top. Sure.
I mean, yeah.
There's the stairs.
Well, I mean, it's just, you have so much talent. I mean, is there something else that you would want to do within music, like as a producer or a songwriter or?
No, I like what I do here in Junkyard. I mean, like Clint Eastwood said, a man's like got to know his limitations. I've been blessed with, Chris had a lot of great ideas. Tim is a great songwriter. I surround myself with talented people to convey my own talents.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and you had an interesting quote. You actually said that you're glad that you didn't end up like Axl Rose, or you wouldn't have made the record that you made in 2017, the High Water, because you're still hungry and you have the drive for success.
Well, and I don't want Axl to misunderstand what I meant. That wasn't a disrespecting him.
No.
If I had been given that much spotlight and that much money at that time in my life, it wouldn't have ended well. And I know that. And in 2017, you know, that was 26 years after the first record.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we hadn't been together the whole time. So there wasn't a lot of time for exploration or, you know, finding a new direction for the band. We just started where we, you know, we picked up where we left off, you know, 3-chord rock and roll, try to write a 3-minute song that affects somebody. Whereas Axl had to, you know, do you know, an answer to Appetite for Destruction, and it was Use Your Delusion. And
I love those albums.
I hadn't heard the whole album or both of them ever. I saw a video for one of their, it was a November Rain or one of them, but it went on for like 7 minutes, and there was dolphins and whales and shit. And
that's strange.
Like, what happened to Appetite?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Use Your Illusion. They definitely.
I'm thankful that we didn't have that like difficult like jazz progression stage in the middle.
Yeah, every band's different for sure. You guys like stick to your guns. I like that. So one of the songs you co-wrote, "To the Wheels Fall Off," with Charlie Starr of Blackberry Smoke, and he was actually the one that reached out to you guys, right?
That wasn't a co-write. He wrote that song.
Oh, he wrote the full song. Okay.
Yeah, Brian Baker had a relationship with him previous, and they were somewhere talking about something, and he gave the song to Brian to present to us. He said, "Okay, hell yeah, thanks."
That's cool. What other fans do you guys have? I mean, I'm hearing Supersuckers, Blackberry Smoke. I mean,
all the good ones. Tom Waits, Nina Simone, Elvis Presley. They all love us.
That's awesome. Tell me about Clay Anthony, the original bass player. He left the band in '91. He had some issues, sadly he died in a car accident just recently. But one of you guys said in an interview that he had actually cleaned up and helped a lot of people later in life, which is really cool to hear. But back in the day, like, is there stories or memories you have of him? Like, I heard he was a little bit of a wild man, or.
Clay was what we projected ourselves as. Clay, you know, we were like street rock, you know, dirty, kind of gritty, kind of checkered lifestyle. Clay was that. He was the real shit. He was you know, he had been in jail. I mean, you know, maybe a couple of us have been in jail a night or two, but Clay was the real deal. So he gave us that street credibility in my mind.
Like didn't you say he protected the bus? Like he was like the bouncer for the bus. Like if people try to.
I mean, it's sort of in general, but I mean, there was one particular night in outside of Cleveland, we had a show, and one of our roadies had stolen an 8-ball from the pool table at the bar, and so 3 bouncers came up as we were, you know, we'd loaded up all our gear and we were, you know, ready to take off, and these 2 or 3 bouncers charged through the bus door, you know, demanding that we return the 8-ball. And Clay instantly went into like prison mode, like respect my space, and put a kick to the guy's chest. The first guy that tried to enter the bus, he kicked him in the chest and like sent him out sprawling. And we U-turned and, you know, kicked up gravel getting out of the parking lot out there.
Jeez.
But you know, Clay turned around and collected himself. He was like, you know, you don't disrespect the bus. You don't come into our home, you know. But he was just that guy, you know, he was real.
That's crazy. So you had a crazy story too, though. I heard you talking about the song Hands Off. The lyrics for that are not fiction. A girl really ran over your foot with a car and choked you.
Well, it was just a Honda. It was a small car. Like, we were having
Still a car though.
She was in the driver's seat and I was in the window, and so yeah, my foot was in the way. But yeah, that's all true. I mean, it's, I feel like you can't write a song without having some sort of personal experience or some sort of connection, or else you're singing hollow,
So that's what I hear too, that a lot of the best songs are coming from a place of pain, usually not when you're really happy and you want to share that. It's usually when you're like pissed off at the world or depressed or something, right?
I guess Farrell, or that guy who wrote Don't Worry, Be Happy, write songs when they're in a good mood. But most of my stuff, and a lot of stuff, I think, comes from bad experiences and, things that you experience that aren't that fucking fun to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But those ring true.
And is that cathartic to write those songs? Like you feel better after writing it?
Well, for a few minutes till the next thing happens.
Well, what's going on now with Junkyard? Are you guys writing new stuff?
Slowly. But yeah,
So,
we got probably half an album.
Oh
yeah, we have a single that we're finishing. It's being mastered, art, things like that, which we're going to put out as soon as the label gets it together and we have a release date we'll announce. It's a good A and B side. We'll make a video and we're pressing 7 inches and all that stuff. And that, in theory, is going to lead into a full blown album.
okay.
So like how we did High Water, which had Faded come out before it, and then the album kind of followed it up. It'll be a closer follow up. We're hopefully going to have it out in 21. But yeah, we're writing. We don't, since there's kind of a conglomeration of writers for Junkyard, David principally the lyricist, and with everyone pitching in and music coming from different sources, whether Brian still contributes some or I do, so it's the pace of it. It's not like one guy sitting down and writing 12 songs. It's kind of a bunch of guys when we can get in the same room coming to a place and finding it. So the songwriting process can be a little bit, I don't know, slower than some bands. I don't know, but we're also very quality conscious as well. It's we want it to be great. We spent a long time between first the 6, 7s, and 9s and High Water. We knew that had to make a real statement. And so now we're essentially following up High Water, which I guess made a statement. So we're but what's coming along, first of all, the single's really good. The single's like there's a bit of, we try to move the ball a little bit forward musically and touch, try different things a bit staying within the parameters of what the band is really about. We're not interested in, like David says, going through a jazz phase. So but the single's very strong. And then the stuff that's coming up for the next record is already shaping up really well. So I think it's going to be good. We're about halfway there. But, we're also a band that does well when we start to have deadlines. So when the single comes out, that'll start to really put a fire under our ass to circle in. And there are other ideas floating that haven't been kind of polished up enough to really say they exist as a song yet. But there's other good stuff floating around that we're going to.
Okay.
There's 2 or 3 years of ideas floating around that have yet to become concrete, but I have no doubt that they will be concrete by the end of the day.
And
once we start getting deadlines, we tend to rally a bit more and know we have a time frame, because you start, in theory, have tour dates to support it. But as you all know, we're still kind of waiting to see how that's going to shake out. So, there's still a lots of life is amorphic these days. And so it's hard to really pin down rushing a record that you don't know when you're going to be able to support, I guess is what it is.
So ideally though, if shows do come, I'm sure.
So long.
What's that?
Our patients have been, our fan base has been patient for so long. I mean, they waited 26 years for the follow up.
Yeah.
Our second album.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a way to.
We can wait. But
for our next.
So when shows do come back, like what is the ultimate goal? Like what would you want to do like 100 shows a year if you did every weekend? I mean, or 50 weekends a year, that's like 100 shows. Would that be, or is that too many? Would you rather just do like 20 or 30 shows a year? Or?
We kind of do, depending on, people have other things to deal with. Some of us are probably more able to tour than others, and that all depends. But, we really need it to be you know, we try to keep it as, you know, we don't like to do substitutions or anything like that. So we like the core, the five of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of limits us a bit. I think for when High Water came out, we ramped up to doing around 40 shows a year.
That's a lot.
Since we mostly do fly-ins are hard on our 50-year-old bodies. So I think we could probably manage a few more.
Yeah.
We see, you know, so basically what we do is as many fly-ins as we can physically manage that are cost effective. Probably and then a couple of 2-week runs, either somewhere in Europe as one of the 2 weeks, and then an American part of America for 2 weeks, whether, you know, the Southwest was being talked about for last year before it all got shut down, but we've done the East Coast. That was the year before that. So I think we kind of, you know, knowing with the record out, knowing it's probably a 2 or 3 year cycle of supporting that record with minimum of 30 high end. I think the most we've ever done is 50 shows in a year since we've been back. I think we did 1 year, we had 50 plus.
Okay.
And that's probably a boat thrown in there too. I mean, I know there's talk about us being on the boat in 22.
That'd be fun.
I don't know if that counts as how many shows that counts as, but it's 5 days of travel. So
okay.
For us.
That pays well though, right? I mean, it's totally that's the prime gig to get at this point is.
I guess. I mean, you know, our feeling was we like to play. So if we're going to be out for 5 days, I'd like to play for 5 days, and you only play a couple times. So that was my only. I like playing. You know, I don't even remember what we got paid last time. I couldn't even tell you. You know what I mean? I see what comes in the envelope when we get home 2 weeks later, and then I know how much we made.
But it's fun too, right? It's like a vacation.
When we do these weekend things and we say, you know, cost effective, it doesn't mean we turn down gigs because they're not offering us enough money. We're trying to cover hotel bills and rent a car and that kind of thing.
You can't lose money. I mean,
there's tours where we come out, you know, I might make a couple $100 seriously
after expenses.
Yeah.
After expenses. Yeah.
So
I mean, it's love of the game.
And you know, the merch doesn't show up and your whole tour is fakakta. I mean, we've had things like that happen. We had a whole tour of Spain, remember, and the t-shirts got lost and like, well, there goes our profit.
No.
You know, and shit like that happens.
That
you just have to
sucks.
go, okay, well, we're here. You know, what are you going to do? So,
but it's love of the game.
What's that? It's part of the game. Yeah.
It's love of the game more than the prospect of actually making money out of this whole deal.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. That's cool. I love the music, and I look forward to new stuff. I'd love to see you guys live. I've never seen you live, but I've heard rumors that you guys are pretty good live. So that would be fun to see a live show.
We're definitely a live band.
Yeah.
I mean, to really get Junkyard, you have to see us live.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do like to end. What's that?
It's all about the energy. It's all
for sure.
Our live show is our bread and butter. That's what we are.
Yeah. Well, definitely let me know if you come to Phoenix, I'll come and see you. Or even if you're like nearby, sometimes I drive to Vegas. I drove to Denver to see Dangerous Toys one time. It was a blast. I had fun though.
Is the Mason jar still there?
I forget what it was called. No, but I've heard of that. I feel like that's like a legendary club, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
That's cool. Yeah, well, I like to end each episode with a charity. And I think you guys had mentioned, somebody mentioned Meals on Wheels. Is that the one you want to give a shout out to? Or is there another one that's...
I would say if you would go on the Junkyard Facebook page, there's a GoFundMe for Clay Anthony's daughter. And if you were going to donate to anything like that,
okay.
You could go to Junkyard Blues, or you could go to our Facebook page. There'll be links there.
How old is his daughter?
How old is she, David? 8 or 9? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
So that's just a tragedy because he had cleaned up his life it's like Sam Kinison. Sam Kinison got totally sober, cleaned up his life, and then he got hit by a drunk driver.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's just, the whole thing's tragic. You know? Yeah. It was awful. And, we luckily got to see him. We played some awful show in Orange County down here. It was just like one of those nights where you're like, oh. And then Clay Anthony showed up, and we hadn't seen him for years. And I hadn't seen him, and I'd never even played with him. Oh. And so we had him come up and sit in with us on the song Texas. And, he was all smiles and in great spirits. And we sat it wasn't even dressing room. It was one of those places where you just basically sit out back. And but we were able to tell war stories to each other and talk about, it was
That's
great to
cool.
see him when he was in good spirits. And that's the last any of us saw him, as well. So at least, but it was nice. We all had a chance to really kind of, I don't know, put a bow on it.
Yeah,
We didn't know
absolutely.
at the time, of course, but
I hadn't had a close connection with Clay since he departed the band.
Yeah.
But there was no animosity or anything like that. Things happen, but it was great to see him then, and it was tragic to hear what happened.
Yeah, no, it is. Well, I hope that you guys have more good fortune in the future, and hopefully lots of new shows, and I look forward to new music. So thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chuck.
So in a nutshell, that's the story of the band Junkyard. I'm sure there's a lot more to tell, but that should be enough to pique your interest and check out their music or see them live. And if you're a fan already, then I hope you learned something new as well. Thank you so much to Tim and David for coming on. Make sure to follow them on social media to stay up to date with new music and tour dates, and also some cool throwback pics that they post. Like I said earlier, Mother Love Bone, they posted a picture of it was Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone wearing a Junkyard t-shirt. Very cool. And while you're on Instagram and Facebook or Twitter or whatever, give me a follow to keep up with new podcast episodes coming out, or check out some of the other interviews I've done already, like with Tora Tora, Dangerous Toys, so many more. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and remember to shoot for the moon.